Hi, welcome back to another episode of Anyone Can Paint. We're going to start a brand new painting this week. This is one that you kind of see at the beginning of our show and as we're going through some of the different paintings. You probably will recognize this one. This is one of the cabin that's in the back and the river comes through, a little bit of a waterfall, pine trees all around. So we're going to get started and we're going to do something a little different than we usually do. We're going to actually mix our first color on the palette to put up in the sky as opposed to just starting to throw color up on the canvas itself. So I'm going to start with some white, a little bit of blue, and just a small amount of brown. We want to kind of get a little bit of a haze going back there where it's maybe a little bit of a mist. So it's kind of a grayed down color. Again, this is mostly white, some blue, and a little bit of brown. I'm going to go right up, start throwing. I'm going to add a little bit of white till I'll be right back up. It's a little dark. There we go. Just kind of bring this down a little bit. Again, we're going to have some pine trees back there that will cover up some of this. So you just want to get like a little bit of a base coat. I'm just grabbing a little bit more white, just working it into that color, and bringing it over. Again, not a lot of this is going to show, so you don't have to get really fancy with the sky. Again, maybe it's just an early morning where the kind of the mist is starting to rise up a little bit. Something like that. Then we're going to start with our first distant row of trees. We're going to go right back down to the canvas. We're going to stay with that basic color we started. We're going to add a little bit more blue to it, and we're going to add a touch of green to it. And this will end up being a grayish green. And as long as you're a little bit darker than what you have for your sky, you'll be just about right. Let's see how this will work. Yeah, that'll work. Now these trees, because they're further back, you don't want a lot of detail to them. We're not going to highlight them or anything because we want those to stay way in the back. So these just get roughly put in. You just want the general shape of a pine tree. Again, just want a little bit darker so it shows up. And we're going to have other layers of pine trees going on, so you can just bring this down to wherever you want to do. I'm just going to reload. I'll be right back up. Again, just looking for basic shapes. Again, I'm just going to reload the brush, same color. And while it looks really bad now because there's not a lot in front of it, as we start putting layers in, you'll see that that kind of starts to regress back into the background and you don't really even pay attention so much. And it really kind of takes on like a background curtain effect where it's there, but you really don't pay a lot of attention to it. We're going to keep working our way across. I'm going to remix this. Again, this is white, some blue, and a little bit of green. And don't feel like you have to make exactly that same color. This can kind of change and alter a little bit. But just really loose strokes, just kind of suggestions. I'm going to reload and be right back up again. What's kind of cool is that if you don't have a lot of paint on your brush, obviously you're not going to be putting a lot up there, and those actually will automatically look like they're further back than maybe what those are that we put in just a little bit ago. I'll make up a little bit more of this. Again, the white, blue, and green. These are just really loose brush strokes, basically using the corner of the brush. Again, not worried about detailing. Put them right there. See, there's a good example. Is I didn't reload my brush because I had more paint on my brush. That will be darker than this one. And that one automatically gets pushed in the back because it's so much lighter. Reload, be right back up. We'll put a few more back here. Again, just general shape. And we'll put a couple more in. Again, you don't want to do a whole lot more than what I'm doing. Just throw it in, because these are all going to get kind of pushed back a little bit. Now we're going to put another row of pine trees in. These are going to get closer, so you need these to get a little bit darker. So I'm going to switch to a different size brush. That was my large flat bristle brush. I'm sorry I didn't tell you that I was using. Clean that one out. And then I'm going to switch to the medium one. Or if you feel more comfortable, you can actually go to your smaller flat bristle brush. Basically using the same color combination, white, blue, and green. However, you're going to be using a little bit less white and more of the blue and the green color. So you want this to just get a little bit darker than what you have. You don't want to get real dark, because you still need to save your darker colors for the things that are up closer. So you just kind of come up and just tap this on. And as long as you're darker than what that is, then you're okay. Just using the corner of the brush. And these are going to have a little bit more detail to them, but not a ton more. Just really loose strokes. And you can always come back up and pull some of the sides out. Got a little bristle hanging out there. I'm going to reload. Remember to kind of vary the height of your trees once in a while. You just don't want to get a whole row of those that are all the same size. Kind of looks a little bit more interesting if you can just vary the height of that. Probably looks a little bit more natural too. Got another couple bristles. This is a brand new brush, so it's going to shed a little bit. So I'm kind of fighting that for a little while here. Again, if you hold your brush way back on the handle, I know we've talked about that before, but that kind of helps to promote a little bit more of a looser stroke. You tend to use your wrist a little bit more. And it gives just a little bit more freedom just to kind of throw it in a little bit better. I'm going to keep working my way across to the right. Put one right here, goes behind that cabin. And put another one here. I'm going to reload, I'll be right back up. That actually is going to be a little porch that stands out, so we need to put that tree behind that. And just reloading every time you see me move a little bit. And we're just going to continue to work towards the right-hand side. I'll put one in here. And it doesn't really happen or matter what goes on in the body of the tree. You just want to make sure you get the nice little branches that are sticking out. And you can always do that after you've shaped the tree. And we'll put a little one here. And we'll put a couple more over there. I'm just going to make another little batch of this with the white, blue, and the green. Remember, it doesn't have to be exactly what you've been mixing. I'm going to put a little bit more blue in that color just to darken it up a little bit. I'll be right back up there. There we go. I get asked pretty often through phone calls or emails, why do I use the flat bristle brush to do pine trees? I know it's kind of a popular thing that people tend to use fan brushes sometimes. My personal feeling is that a fan brush tends to give you the same look of a tree. It's kind of the same shapes, and it gives you the same results. And to me, it looks like all the trees are basically looking the same. Where the flat bristle brush, again, in my opinion, it's very difficult to duplicate the same shape of a tree over and over and over, which I think looks a little bit more natural in nature. You don't really see a whole lot of them that are exactly the same. And again, to me, a fan brush kind of helps to produce the same look of a tree over and over, and I think it kind of gets a little monotonous after a while, so that's why I tend to use a flat bristle brush. Again, these trees that I'm doing are staying back in the background. We're going to actually be putting more of these trees in a little bit, and those will be the ones that we're going to kind of detail out a little bit more. We'll put the highlights on there. I think this will be the last one we're going to do for the background here. Again, just nice loose brush strokes. All right, now I'm not really going to clean out my brush. Now what I'm going to do is we're going to do the underpainting for the ground here. We're going to have river kind of, darn bristles, kind of cuts back through here, and actually we'll go back behind some trees. We're going to put a few more in here. But there's going to be some ground that goes back here underneath the cabin that comes around, and then that section. So I'm just going to grab some blue and green. Now this is where we're going to go back to doing what we usually do, is I just grab the color right on my brush and I blend it right on the canvas. This is where your brush strokes are not important. If you have a little bit more blue in it sometimes, or a little bit more green, that's not important either. We just need to get a dark color on the canvas, and it kind of helps to promote where you're going to have your grass at. And I'm going to go right over that tree. If you do like I do and kind of sketch this out first, the reason I sketch that out is it kind of gets my sizing and proportions correct. I used to, way back in the early days, just kind of go at it. And oftentimes when I was done with the painting, I would notice that, boy, I should have made this bigger or smaller. And it was kind of late at the time. So what I've done in recent times is kind of sketch it out and just basically get my shapes, my main shapes, where I want them to go. And that way you can kind of adjust all that stuff before you start putting paint down and make all your decisions in. And you'll find that the more you do this, and obviously you end up covering up your sketch, but the more you do this, you'll start to remember where you had things. Now, it's always not necessarily important that you put them exactly where you had it. I guess sometimes it could make a difference, but generally you just want to get it kind of in that area, and you would kind of remember where that went. I'm going right up underneath that cabin, and that ground's going to go back like that. And you can see how this is has a little bit more green in it than that does. And again, that's not a big deal. You just need to be a dark color. And I'm just kind of going around where the water is going to go. But because this is acrylic and it dries a little bit quicker, you can always go back and change the shape and paint over things. So you're really just kind of at this point just blocking in, as underpainting always is, just kind of blocking in where you want your larger objects, the shapes, to go. And again, you're not stuck with this shape. It can always be adjusted. Make it smaller, larger, whatever you'd like to do. And just have a little bit more to block in for the ground. That comes down like that. Well, here's an important tip I should give you. Wherever you have an outer edge like this, which is sometimes called your hard edge, if you make that really straight across there, what happens is that you get a buildup of paint there, and that causes a ridge. And what happens is that when you start to put other colors on top of that, because there's a thickness right there, that ridge always shows up. So you want to always make sure that you kind of fluff up that edge if you're going to be painting on top or below this, just to soften that up so you don't get that ridge of paint. And you'll know what I'm talking about, because if you ever do this and you get that ridge, it will drive you nuts trying to get rid of it, and you can't get rid of it. You're just kind of stuck with it. So, all right, I'm going to clean this out, and then we're going to block in the river. And this is just going to be with some white. And this is gesso. As you always know, I have gesso out here. And gesso is primarily a primer that they apply on raw canvas. The canvas that you buy at a store has already been primed with that. So it's really a product that you don't need to use as a primer. That's always only if you're going to be using or buying raw canvas that typically comes on a roll. And if you're stretching your own canvas, that's when you'll want to apply 2 or 3 coats of gesso on there. And all that does is prepares that material, the canvas, to accept paint. It works just like a primer when you're going to be painting a wall. You know, when you put up maybe like drywall and you just have the drywall part of it there, it's just raw. What you want to do is put primer on it first so it gets the surface ready to accept the paint that you're going to be putting on top, which will be your, you know, your final coat of paint. Gesso works the same way, but however, I use gesso, especially on television, because it's a thinner version of white paint, and it tends not to dry out so quick with the hot lights and things. So it just makes blending a little bit easier. But you can use white out of the tube, and I use that sometimes. Or you can just use gesso, whatever you feel like. But whenever I'm telling you I'm using gesso, you can obviously substitute that for white. I don't want you to get the feeling I'm feeling, or I want you to go out and have to buy all that, because that's certainly not the case. Again, just kind of block this in. Your brush strokes don't matter. We're going to be doing other things to this, like putting highlights in. We're going to have some rocks in there. This is where we're going to have a little waterfall come down. So the river comes into the painting like this. There'll be a little bit of a waterfall. Then it works its way right out the canvas. After you've got that done, again, you can clean out your brush. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to put in a few more pine trees. And these, again, are going to be closer. So this is where, again, you want to make these to be a little bit darker. And if you still have that batch still made up, you can put it right into there. But we're not going to add any more white to this. It's just going to be blue and green. And there's still a little bit of white there from what we've been using. You want to get your brush to a chiseled edge, and we've done this many, many times. How you get that is that once you've got your color blended, you want to put your brush into it, and you want to pull your brush through there, turn your brush over, put it in the paint again, pull it through again, and that will give you a nice sharp edge, which we refer to as a chiseled edge. And that's what you're going to be painting with. So we're going to come over here. We're going to put a pretty good, I think there was a large tree that was in this area. So we're going to, again, this just needs to be darker than the last layer of trees that you put on, which that clearly is. So that's going to go up here. And I just touch the canvas to get it started. That's the peak of the top of the tree, just like on those. And then I'm using the corner of the brush. And at the top where you want the small branches, it's just very light pressure. You're just kind of hitting the canvas. As you work your way down, you're just putting a little bit more pressure in the canvas, and you'll notice that branches will automatically start to form. So I'm going to drop down a little bit to show the peak, and I'm using the corner of the brush the entire way. Now this has a lot of blue in it, which is not that big of a deal. Maybe it's a blue spruce. And just work that down into that color that we just put on. Now, because this tree's closer and darker, this is when we'll have highlights in. Then we had a couple more over here. I'm going to add a little bit more green to this color while I got it. And we had another row of trees that went across here. So I'm going to put one there. Same thing. And after each tree, you want to reshape your brush, reload it. And that's maybe not that you need more paint, but you need to reshape the brush to make sure you can get your corners out there. Again, drop down using the corner of the brush. Just working it back and forth. And as I start working down lower in the tree, I'm pushing into the canvas a little firmer. And you automatically start getting the wider branches. And you want to bring that right down into this area here. And you can see how that pushes that river back, so it looks like it goes back behind that tree. And that's exactly what you want to do. I'm just, again, reloading the brush, getting it to a chiseled edge. And we're going to put a few more over this way. And this is where you really kind of want to put these in good strategical areas, like right here. I wouldn't necessarily want to do that because I'm going to cover that tree up. But it wouldn't look bad if I started it here, because still you're going to cover it up, but you're going to see some of those trees, which creates another layer, which always helps with that thing of distance that we always talk about. It's really important. So the placement of these, you can really use to your advantage by putting them in the right places. Now again, I am covering some of those up, but you can still see it. So again, it adds another layer. And you've got two corners on your brush, so as you start, especially on larger trees, as you start to run out of paint, just flip your brush over and you can use your other corner. I'm just going to reload again, and I'll be right back up. We just have a couple more to go. Maybe this one will go like this. Again, corner of the brush. Light amount of pressure at the top. As you work down, I'm going to flip over to the other corner because it's got more paint over on that side. Down here, you can just kind of blop this out, and all you need to be concerned with are your edges, where you get the nice branches out. What happens in the center of the tree, that's not important. But you want to get the general shape. I'm going to go one more over here. I'm just going to reload one more time. And maybe, let's put it right there. But I know through all my classes that I teach that when you're first making pine trees, it's really a frustrating thing. But it's one of those things that you just got to keep practicing, and the more you do it, the more comfortable you get, and all of a sudden one day you'll start popping those rascals right out. All right, I think we got most of our trees in. All right, now we're going to clean out our brush. Now probably would be a good time to block in. Hopefully we got enough time to do this, but if not, we'll get as far along as we can, and then we'll pick up maybe next week. We're going to start blocking in where the cabin's going to go. So with this, I'm going to use my small flat bristle brush, and I'm just going to go into some brown and blue, and this just needs to be a dark color. And you know, we will lighten this up with highlights, but we just kind of want to get the general shape of it. So, and I may make this a little bit larger just to take up this area, or I might go back in and fill it in with trees. I should have done that before. So this is going to be the back of the roof. And our light, by the way, is going to come in from the right-hand side, so this side of the cabin will get some highlight. And then this goes down like this. There's like a shed that's attached. I'm just going to darken this up a little bit. I'll be right back, just reloading the brush. And that's the roof. Again, I'm going to split that up so it looks like there's two buildings there, but we'll do that in the highlighting phase. And then there's also a porch. I'll put that in that kind of sticks out like this, and then we've got some support pieces there. This will just help you to understand the general shape of it. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add just a little bit of white so you can understand where the sides, where the difference of the sides and the roof are. Just so it makes a little bit of sense. There. Hopefully you can see the difference here. Again, when we put highlights and shadows on this, this will make more sense, but we're just right now just getting this all blocked in. I'm going to stay with that color. I'm going to darken it up a little bit with some blue and brown. And now I'm going to, since we've kind of got that color, I'm just going to start blopping in some rocks that are going to go along this river. And you can make this color to be whatever you want your rock base to be, but just kind of put these in. Make sure you change some of the shapes and the heights. Over here is where we're going to have our waterfall, so we need some rocks to contain that. Put some back there. I'm just reloading, I'll be right back. And you can put as many or as few of these in as you want. You can put some in the water. You can just get some good general shapes, change them up a little bit. You know, it looks like a lot of rocks, I know, but you know how I am with rocks. But the highlighting phase goes pretty quick through this. As long as you don't play around and make it out to be really more than what it is, it can go pretty quick. And I know I'm just blobbing, so if you've never seen me do this before, I know it looks a little crazy, but you'll see when we do the highlights of this, how this will all kind of start coming together. The benefit of blobbing is that you're not really stuck with certain sizes and shapes. You can just make as many as you want. Just wherever you want these to go. And again, you don't have to have that many if you'd rather not. But I know you all want to put more rocks in than what I always put in. They're just a general shape, and you can always add more later if you want to, if you feel like you need a couple more, especially if you need them in certain spots. And this is all going to be grass and things, so you can put some up here in the grasses if you want to. Wherever you want. If you don't like them, you can just cover them up. It's not a big deal. All right, let's go ahead and clean out our brush. Those are kind of basically all set in. All right, and this is probably as far as we're going to get today. Next week, we'll kind of pick right up where we left off. If you'd like, send me or email me any photographs that you have of any landscapes that you took maybe on vacation or it's outside your back door or something. Send those in to me. We might be able to use those as a painting one day. So please send those. Also, if you have a painting that you've done that you would like me to critique, send me a photo or email me an image of it, and I will get back to you and let you know if there's any areas that you should work on. I'd be more than happy to do that. But until then, thank you so much for watching. We appreciate you tuning in. Remember that you can do this, I promise. Anyone can paint.